Warhammer 40,000 is an absolutely sprawling universe of lore now. It's been around for literally my entire life. It was so dope as a kid to visit the Games Workshop store in the mall back in the day, and even if I'm not super well versed in the extent of 40k these days, I'll always have a super deep appreciation for it and do enjoy those solution videos. The series has definitely gravitated more towards strategy-based games over the years because, well, at the end of the day, that's what it literally is. However, there are awesome stories to be told here in other genres, and you know, it always kind of felt like 40k deserved its time in the sun back in the day when first-person shooters didn't even have the name first-person shooter. You know, back when they were just called Doom clones. Even though it might be like 25 years late, BOLTGUN is the Warhammer 40k Doom clone. Now, amongst all the cool lore of the 40k universe in general, this Space Marine is probably one of my favorite tropes. These guys are literally just men in highly fortified and automated armor suits that they essentially have been bred from birth to operate. Such to the point that unless they became Space Marines, they'd probably have a hard time existing outside of their armor at all. It was essentially their only purpose in life to be a Space Marine. The lore for 40k is just wild in a lot of ways and is so expensive at this point that it's hard to keep track of it all. But from a military perspective, the Space Marines are like the special forces option for serious human military theaters. Like, these guys are here to get the job done and basically operate like man-sized tanks. They're just super cool, man. They command the ultimate respect on any future battlefield they find themselves in. Anyways, enter Warhammer 40k BOLTGUN, the Doom clone we never got back in the day. And you know what, it's just such a perfect marriage of the two. And considering we had some large franchises like Star Wars dip their toes into the early FPS scene, it just seems crazy now to think we never saw anything from 40k pop up in the genre back in the day. Oh well, we're here now, and it's brilliant. BOLTGUN was just such a breath of fresh air in the retro shooter genre. It harkens back to the original Doom concept, with you being a one-man army and an absolute force of nature. It's almost comical at times just how much destruction one dude is able to cause here. Now, the story is there per se, but much like a shooter game from the 90s, the story is secondary to the gameplay and the level design itself. The environments here tell a story, the combat pushes you forward towards your goal, and often leaves you just feeling absolutely satisfied with the carnage you delivered. The formula is simple. This is your basic 90s shooter, through and through. You collect keys to open doors to new areas, to collect more keys to open more doors to new areas. Once you get to the end of the level, you're generally going to find yourself in a sizable fight. Finish that fight, and it's off to the next level. All capped off with the classic level end screen to boot. You've got a pretty great arsenal of weapons here, with your starting weapon, the BOLTGUN, maintaining relevance throughout the playthrough. Like a really great touch, and might kind of be an obvious decision considering the game is literally named after it. I actually ran the BOLTGUN for the majority of my playthrough, and the ammo upgrades you find kept it even more relevant with beefier enemies. Solid game design right there. One of the standout weapons here is the heavy bolter, which is just a complete vibe. This thing has the most brutal and visceral presentation that it just can't help but put a smile on your face. Essentially the LMG of the game. Once you hold down mouse 1 with this thing, everything in front of you is gonna have a bad time. Like, I don't think I have any medical sensitivities to lights and sounds, but the way this thing assaults your eardrums and eyeballs when you start unloading just kind of made me feel funny. The level design here is grand, and gameplay wise was well balanced and not hard to find your way through. There are baked in hints to the levels to keep you on track, and despite some purists thinking this stuff is lame, I honestly don't care that much. The epic themes of the level definitely caught me just staring at the details and snapping some screenshots on more than one occasion. Absolutely great work here. While I found the movement could be a bit floaty at times, this momentum is very obviously playing into the fact that you're this absolute unit of a Space Marine. Hence the reason your footsteps sound like this. jumping and mantling pretty much always work perfect. However, the dashing I found to be a bit janky. There is melee combat in this game, however, I just found it to be a bit pointless after a certain point, especially when the arenas start to get really busy. It's just better to keep moving. Some might see the melee in this game as a disappointment, considering it was a major focus of its spiritual brother, 40k's Space Marine from 2011, but I think you really need to consider the genre this game plays itself in. I think it stays well in its lane. Some basic criticisms I can offer here is mainly the lack of visual feedback when taking serious damage from enemies. It's just not great. It's extremely easy for one or two enemies to just wreck your health and armor without you even realizing it. There are audio cues, but amongst the insanity of your typical arena, it just gets buried in the mix. You only get a visual cue when you're basically near death. This essentially means that you're just constantly looking down to check your health numbers, and if you're going to make me do that, at least have it so I can adjust the size of the font or something. You know, like, I mean, I come from an era where this was normal, and I generally still use it when I play OG Doom to this day. With the grenades, there are two main types, and then a third that is essentially like a nuke. This thing will rip off easily 3/4 of the health bar or more of the heavier boss type units, and obviously is an extremely rare pickup. However, it also still just finds itself in rotation with your regular nades in terms of controls, which it can be problematic. I really wish it was just a separate keybind altogether, because I'm not lying, this thing is in a completely different class of damage from the others, and you know, sometimes I mash buttons without thinking the whole thing through. Also, in the end, the limited enemy variety with the plague toads and nurglings did eventually become tedious. Like, if I find myself in a situation with a champion where I need to, like, focus on this guy before he absolutely wrecks me, it's just beyond annoying to have these assholes getting in your face non-stop, because the progression of the difficulty scaling in this game is to simply just add more. The same can be said about the base cultist humanoids when it comes to like the big arenas. Yeah, these enemies are totally fine during the progression of the average level and provide some absolutely satisfying cannon fodder for your base bolt gun. I mean, even the base starting gun in this game just turns these guys into a red mist. It's so good. But if they're being used in an arena, they're just peppering you with like the Doom Plutonia chain gunner experience. Like, it's kind of just beyond annoying, and getting your health chunked by the bullet hell these guys create is often infuriating. It's really just a minor grievance though, so pump the brakes if you're that type of person who really likes Doom slaughter maps and you're already instinctively typing skill issue in that comment box. Just pump the brakes, bud. Throughout my playthrough of BOLTGUN on hard mode, I couldn't help but think of comparing this game to the recent retro FPS hit Proteus. And if you told me that the dev team from BOLTGUN took a bunch of their inspiration from that game, I would not be surprised in the least. This comparison is completely endearing though, because much like Proteus, BOLTGUN is a game that focuses on the FPS basics we all grew up on. It stays in its lane and keeps things simple. And much like I praised that game for as well, this simple gameplay structure is at the core of the charm with BOLTGUN. It's not overly complicated, it pushes you to move and think fast while having simple tools and goals. You just have mouse 1, WASD, and a heartbeat. Or is that 2 heartbeats? Thanks for watching.